Hola. ¿Sí?
I'm sorry, I got lost. Sorry.
All right, we have our opening.
Yeah, our opening. Are we? Shall we?
Yes,
Of
please.
course.
Oh, okay. So, welcome to a new edition of Traductores al Aire, the first online radio show by and for translators and professionals who work with languages. This is our first all-in-English edition. Traductores al Aire, now in English, an independent, federal, and virus-free show to share interesting and professional thoughts and concerns. You can find us on Facebook at Traductores al Aire and Instagram,
Underscore.
Aire. Traductores al Aire is underscore, thank you, I forgot, sorry. Traductores al Aire is hosted by Delfina Morganti Hernandez, who is based in Rosario, and Martín Chamorro and Silvina Celie, who are based in Buenos Aires. For as long as we stay home due to the pandemic, we go out with our show through Zoom. Thank you to Martín Chamorro. How are you doing, rest of the team?
Hey,
Good.
hi. I wanted to say also hi to Marcelo Rey, our technical operator from the radio, from the physical radio.
Who is probably not going to understand a word we are speaking right now. He doesn't speak English as well. So today, Delphi, is everything fine?
Yes, I'm fine. I'm here.
Good. Okay, so now let's set off. Today we warmly welcome Natali Lekka, who is our first non-Spanish speaker colleague to accept our invitation. So let's hope this is the first of many editions to come. Natali,
yes, I can hear you very
us?
well. Hello. Thank you for inviting me.
On the country, we are truly thankful to you for accepting our invitation. I will introduce her so that you get to know a little bit about her. Natali has an MA in Translation Studies from the University of Warwick. She's based in Northumberland in the United Kingdom and has been translating professionally from English and French into Greek since 2008. She specializes in marketing, advertising, and transcreation, and she's also a bilingual content writer and feature writer for brands and publications. In 2020, she launched content writing for translators, that we are going to come to it in a minute, and e-course that helps translators branch out to content writing. And you can find her on LinkedIn. We're going to share her profile because it's truly interesting. And once again, Natali, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Who would like to start, guys?
Yes, please.
Everyone is a little shy.
Okay.
But I wanted to ask, since you're Greek and you've lived in several countries and you've traveled a lot, right? And you know, in English, everyone says that when something doesn't make sense for them, they said, that sounds like Greek to me. You have learned a lot of languages. How did you find, for example, Spanish, German, and Arabic, for example, which are like far from the languages spoken at home, right?
Italian.
How's your experience?
Arabic.
Yeah, well, Arabic, I studied for 2 semesters and I forgot it. It's very difficult to keep in touch, mostly because I'm a visual person and I like reading. But with Arabic, because Arabic doesn't have vowels, it's actually very difficult to read. So I lost it, unfortunately. I maybe remember maybe 2 or 3 words now. As for German is the other language which I find quite difficult. I did 3 years and I think I'm very basic. And for the remaining languages, French is, my mom speaks French. She grew up in the Belgian Congo. So French was spoken
Wow.
at home from a young age. So when I started learning Italian and then Spanish, I found it quite easy because there are connections between the languages.
Oh yeah.
And also Spanish, the Greek accent is very similar to the Spanish accent from Spain.
Oh.
So yeah, so I find it quite easy. I mean, I'm tempted to do this in Spanish, but I prefer not to. I prefer not to.
No, that's amazing. That's totally fine. That was actually the point of doing this edition totally in English. But I wanted to know, for example, if you have to say that sounds in English, right? If you want to, of course, you're not going to say that sounds like Greek to me because that's your mother tongue. But how do you say it?
In Greek, you say it sounds Chinese.
Oh,
obviously.
it's the same
Yes.
in Spanish. In Spanish, you say like that. It sounds like Chinese to me. Well, so that's a big mystery revealed. You know, here in Argentina, for example, we eat a cold dish called Russian salad, and you know, we sometimes wonder what do they call this in Russia? Do they call it salad or what? And so on. So whenever there's someone from that nationality, I always like to start by asking some of those silly questions to see what they say. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure having you online today. Thanks. Who's next?
Thank you for your.
We can't hear Sil. She's speaking and she's silenced.
Oh, sorry. A ver.
Sil, we can't hear you.
Just a minute.
It's
Acá.
muted.
Yeah.
Muted.
Okay.
All right.
Is it
All
okay
right.
now?
Yeah. No.
Yes.
No, it's fine.
Okay, so my first
Sorry.
question was going to be, since you were born and raised in a French-speaking household and living in Greece, how did you manage not to have one language interfere with the other when you went to school, for example?
Well, Greek is my mother tongue. I wouldn't call myself bilingual. So, and now obviously living in the UK, I would switch to French for me. And also Greek and French are different languages, so that there would be no point of getting them mixed up. The only two languages I did get mixed up learning are Italian and Spanish.
But it never, do you mean to say that it never happened to you that you wanted to say one thing in one language and then you thought of it in the other language?
That has only happened with Italian and Spanish.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. They're quite similar. I don't know if you speak Italian. I know there are a lot of Italians in Argentina. So yes.
Yes, in fact, with when someone, when a Greek person speaks English in films, sometimes the actor sounds like as if he were or she were Italian speaking English. Because I don't know much about it.
Or Spanish from Spain. Or Spanish from Spain. It's very similar, the accent.
Yes.
Oh.
And the intonation curves and everything.
For example, we have a theta, which you don't have that, but in Spain they do have it. In Greece we have it as well. So it's very similar. Yeah. So.
Well,
okay.
We have we learned one Greek sound then. I have one more question, going towards the profession. How did you become a translator, and did that have to do with your moving so much, or did that the movement came after you decide to become a translator?
I think it's because I grew up with languages. So growing up, I knew I wanted to do something with languages. I didn't know exactly what, but I knew that I didn't want to be a teacher. So I didn't want to teach. And at the same time, I like writing. So I said, I want to do something with languages and writing. And so I went into translation. And later on, after many years, I studied writing as well. But I thought that was the best way to combine languages and writing, translation, because basically you write. I like working with texts, so translation for me was the best. But I had never traveled up to the age of 18 abroad. Okay.
And I have a question. And when was it that you moved to the UK, and why? I want to hear the story.
I've moved to the UK 3 times, and the first time I moved to do my master's in Warwick University, and I was 22 at that time. Then I came back. Then about a year later, I moved back for work. My first job in an office was working for IBM. So I was doing multilingual support. And
wow.
For a few years, I worked in television as well. And then I went back, and I moved back 7 years ago in 2013, because I met my boyfriend, who is English. So when they ask me, why did you move to the UK? I say I moved 3 times. The first was for studies, second for work, and the third was for love.
Wow. Those are three good columns for a story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 good parts of the plot.
Yeah.
You said you work for television, which is very demanding, actually. Is it something you chose or something that just came to you?
I wanted to work in the media. I don't know, I've always been kind of, attracted by magazines, TV, and again, I got into television because I was speaking languages. The show I worked on is called A Place in the Sun, which is quite a property travel show. So it shows British people moving to different countries, especially in the Mediterranean, and looking for houses to rent, to buy. And they were looking for researchers who spoke languages. And again, it was a very good combination between working in the media and using languages. So when I applied, they were quite impressed because in the UK, it's not very easy to find people speaking 5 languages. So, and they were looking for people to research on Spain, Italy, Greece, and France. So I had these languages already. So that's how I got in, basically.
Did you like that?
I liked it, but it's not as glamorous in the office. I'm only reference to Spain. It was an office-based job, so it's not as glamorous as it sounds.
But it certainly gave you a lot of experience, right?
Yes, and it's something nice to put on your CV that you've done television. So
just something nice. Don't you find it more content than just something nice, or wasn't that worth it?
Oh no, it was good. It was good. It was good because, like I said, I used languages. It's something I could put on my CV, and I'm also now as a translator. I'm also doing subtitling. So sometimes it works when you tell somebody I've worked in television and I'd like to subtitle, and that's something that always works. So for me, it was a positive experience.
Okay, so basically you got lots of travel around many countries in the 6 continents, and you loved languages since you were a little girl, and you decided to study translation at Warwick, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And you became a content writer, and this is a feature that sometimes our colleagues do not think of as a way out to make money. So I would like, I know it might seem to you a very basic question, but I would like for our audience for you to give us a very brief description about what content writing is so that we can dive into it.
First, I'd like to say that there's a difference between content writing and copywriting. Because sometimes I hear people using this interchangeably, but it's different. Copywriting is more advertising text, writing sales pages, for example, where you have to use a very good turn of phrase. And in my opinion, you can only write it in your mother tongue, because you have to, and you need to know how to sell without being over salesy. That's copywriting. Content writing is writing informative text, and one of the best ways of content writing is blog posts. Now, every 8 out of 10 you'll see they have a blog, right? Writing articles for that blog is content writing. Well, what you basically do is you give information. You don't have to sell anything. You educate the reader, and at the very, very end of the article, there's a soft sell. In other words, there's a link which says, this is called call to action. You know, did you like what you read? If you're interested to try, you know, our service, click here. But the important thing is that the piece itself is meant to educate the reader, give information. And it's, if you want to get into that kind of writing, you need to be in a way that, you know, anybody would understand, almost as if you were writing a letter. It's you need to use everyday speech. So there is a distinction in writing and copywriting.
Basically, you don't own the rights of what you write because you're writing for others,
yes,
right?
That also, because you're getting paid and you give away your rights. You can, of course, you can use, after it has been published, most companies will not have a problem with you sharing it. In fact, they want you to share it on your social media, and you can even include it in your portfolio if you want.
Okay. No, well, that's a very sensitive issue, right? Having a portfolio, but that's an issue for another edition, not today. You see, we are having here.
I have an extra question related to this topic, which is aimed at being inspirational, because it's not like you started doing this from one day to the other, right? It happened gradually. Or maybe not, we don't know. But I wanted to ask you, how is it that you went from being a translator to being a content writer? How did that happen?
Everything is gradual in life. Everything happens, step by step. Actually, before I became a content writer, I was writing for magazines. So, especially in-flight magazines. And that all started one day when I went on LinkedIn and I received a message from the editor of Qatar Airways. Well, I mentioned before that I like traveling, right? And when I was doing television, it was a travel show. So obviously I was quite interested in traveling. So I was writing maybe some pieces about Greece for websites that were not paying me anything. I was posting these things on LinkedIn, and this editor saw me on LinkedIn, and they contacted me, and I wrote my first ever article for a magazine. Wow. For Qatar Airways, the in-flight magazine. And from there, I started writing more and more and more for magazines. And maybe 3 years later, I decided to kind of branch out to content writing, which is writing for companies.
Nice. And one more question related to it. You have mentioned, and I have seen on your website, that you have done a lot for airlines. Do you work mainly on tourism or on airlines currently in your content writer role, or do you do more other topics?
Well, content writing is different from the airlines. The airlines is writing for the magazines, the in-flight magazines, the magazines you see on your flight.
Okay.
So that's a different type of writing from content writing. For the magazines, it's mostly travel. It was mostly writing about Greece. Which obviously I'm from Greece. So for content writing, recently I've been writing more for language apps, like Babel, for example. Content about languages. So.
Oh, so it's more wide. Your scope
Would
is
you say
bigger, right?
Yeah, it's mostly travel, languages, because I like languages. You see, everything's interconnected. And marketing as well. I do write a few pieces in marketing as well, because everything's about marketing. So.
Yeah, thanks.
One thing about that, you said that everything is interconnected and translation has a lot to do with sorry, Delfina has a question first.
I was just hearing Natali talk about LinkedIn, and I wondered if she could share some of her tips for translators who have yet not read her articles. She's very active on LinkedIn, so I think we could usher her to tell us more.
Would you like me to tell you about LinkedIn, the use of LinkedIn, or
about how translators can benefit from using LinkedIn more actively from your perspective?
Well, at the moment, I'm getting about 70 to 80% of work from LinkedIn. So I would say use LinkedIn as much as you can. I'm a person who does a lot of things, having a website, going on Twitter. The only thing I haven't tried is Instagram, but I've tried a lot of things. And for me, the most beneficial thing has been LinkedIn. So my advice would be, obviously, have a strong profile. So fill in everything. Don't leave anything empty. And be active every day, at least once. The others who might tell you need to be 3 and 4 and 5 times active. If you have anything of value to do and you want to do it 3 and 4 times, wait, but I'm not going to overreact. I'm just going to say once at least. Be active. Post something. Post a long form post. People like stories. If you are feeling brave enough, do a video. I don't do videos. I'm not brave enough to do videos.
Come on.
And post social proof. In other words, you're getting a good review. Post that. And the other thing is call to action. So basically, tell the people, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is how you hear me. People need to know you, right? Out of the 4 things, the most powerful thing for me is the stories. Stories could be about anything. It could be about you, how you got into your business. It could be about your business. It could be about a fear you have. People need to know you. People need to trust you. So my advice would be, go on LinkedIn, fill in the profile, start being active. And the other thing is add people. Try to, grow your audience as much as you can, because you'll get the bigger your audience, the more engagement will be on your post. And obviously, the more people engage, context looking at your post, and that will, obviously, you can become viral. No pun intended. I know viral is not the kind of word we need to use right now.
In a positive sense.
Not right now. Not for now. I was listening very carefully to you, and you make it sound easy. there are many things that we need to gather before that, apart from courage. Because one of the many things we are not taught at university, and I think we have spoke about this, is self-confidence. You need self-confidence to be active on the media. But that's another story. Was there anything that you had to do that you did not like doing?
It's not that I did not like doing, but there are things that I was scared, like coming on this show, like you know.
Speaking of courage.
So speaking of
courage.
Yes, exactly. Like I said, I consider myself a writer, so I can write clever things. But if I have to go online or you have to go live, then things change. But then I said to myself, if you want to progress, you need to get out of your comfort zone, and you need to go ahead and do it. And this is why I said yes to you guys, and this is why I said yes to Delfina about a month.
That's practicing what you preach. Thank you so much. Yeah, 100%. Yes.
Today's edition is the first for us all in English, so I think we are all courageous today. So that makes a good thing of this, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Being courageous is one of the many things you need, because everything new is always going to cause some fear, more or less, and it will depend mainly on our personal circumstances and abilities to be able to break those in order to go for better results and new things. So everything sounds easy when we speak about it, but making it come true is not always that easy. So being courageous.
If you're given the opportunity, though, you have two options: to say yes or to say no. So if you say yes, then just try, be yourself and do your best, basically. I remember when I was contacted, I mentioned before that I was contacted by this editor of Qatar Airways to write an article. I remember that was the very, very first time that I was contacted by somebody important to write for money, paid work. I remember I didn't scare. I said, "Oh my God, the whole night." This is how you start. This is normal. Now I can write an article in, like in 1 hour. You have to start from something,
Yes, definitely, yes.
There's only one way to know.
Sorry?
There's only one way to know.
Yes, yes. And I think it is better having the courage to do something, even if the outcome is not the best, than keeping the doubt whether what could have happened if we had dared, right? So sometimes bad results are a good way of learning also. Has it happened to you?
I better regret for something I did or something I didn't.
Okay.
So true. For something you said and something you didn't. I was just wondering, what was the feedback from this guy?
From this guy, from the editor, you mean?
Yeah.
It was a good feedback. I was not asked to write a feature. I wrote just like 400 words. So for me, it was the best way to start. I started from something small, this is how any step for me to do. And it was fun because I wrote about Athens, which is my city, and I wrote about Santorini and Mykonos, island that I know very well. So it's more the fear you feel, it's psychological, but actually once you sit down and do it, it's not that bad. So.
But it's also true that having a good feedback is also going to be much more encouraging for the next, because you started with something small, but then it was a good client of yours, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a good feedback, and of course, I can use that to get other work with other things.
Okay, guys, who's the next question?
I have a question.
Okay.
Okay.
I think it's a suggestion from Silvina, actually, that I mean, I'm going to voice it, but it's her question, I guess. I will make it, but please don't answer it yet, Natali, because we will switch to this sort of humorous section that we have in the show, and I will try to make you laugh, even though we're all laughing. So I'll make the question. We'll move on to the jokes. They are really very short. You pretend that you like them and laugh, and then you respond. Okay. Okay, so the question is, and this is a key question for many people that keeps being discussed over and over again. Do you think it is possible to live out of translation, to make a living out of translation? Okay.
Well, for starters, I know. Well,
wait.
We're leaving the question for a little later. Can I ask?
I'll make the
two jokes. Can I ask a favor from the audience?
Yeah.
Can you please turn on your cameras for the humor segment?
Oh, please!
We want to see the reactions.
Yeah, we need feedback.
We would love to see the reactions.
Some people have a dog as a profile picture. That's not valid.
That's cheating, actually. Hola, Melanie.
Okay. Hi, Melanie, Ceci, Mariela, Marlene. Okay.
Hola, Ceci.
Starting to see some people. All right. Well, I start with the jokes so that we don't run out of time, and Natali can answer this very, very important question. So, Act 1. Aristotle wants to marry a translator. Wait, this is not a joke yet.
Okay.
It's Act 1. Okay. Act 2. Aristotle marries the translator he marked as his future spouse. And Act 3, Aristotle and his spouse spend their time at the wedding, eating and drinking and eating more and more wedding cake. What do you call this story?
The never-ending story?
No? I give you people one try.
Something with philosophy.
Mission Impossible.
Which Aristotle are we talking about? Are we talking the ancient Greek Aristotle, or are we talking about Onassis, yes, who would be like?
No, ancient Greek.
All right.
Oh, and if someone knows the answer and wants to write it in the chat, they can do it as well. And of course, when Delfina says the right answer, everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, I knew it!" But I'm having a hard time.
No one wants to take.
Jessica, you are right.
We
can't give people so much time.
We have an answer from Jessica.
Claro.
My big fat Greek wedding. Well, we can't give
right?
people so much time because they will always guess.
Ahí, muy bien. Ahí.
Bien, muy bien, Jesse.
I don't
Muy
like
bien,
it when people
Jessica.
guess.
Muy bien,
Why?
Jessica.
Come on.
No lo pensé. The
Okay.
first odd thing was having Aristotle getting married, and the second odd thing was a translator getting married. Sorry, Natalie, I know you have a boyfriend. But I've got a social basis for what I'm saying this. I promise to enlarge on this later on.
I subscribe.
Okay.
Okay. So the second story and last, Act 1, Hercules has accepted a translation project from Greek into English. Act 2, Hercules sits in front of his computer and starts typing, but then suddenly he decides he has to leave and do a deed. And Act 3, the translation company he was translating for sees it's past the deadline and the team begins to despair because he's not delivering the translation. What do you call this story?
What do you call this story? Hercules.
I never guessed. Come on.
It's difficult. It is difficult for me to think of Hercules doing a translation actually in front of a computer.
Use your imagination. Come on.
I'm trying. I don't
Think
know.
outside the box.
Okay, I'll give you the answer unless someone wants to speak first on the chat. 3, 2, 1. Holding out for a hero.
Come on. I'm never gonna guess. Back to hero. Cecilia said back to hero.
Back to hero.
That was a good one too.
So, is that it, Delphi? I think we lost her.
I'm here. It's just
okay.
Okay. Sorry, I missed it. So, if we are all settled, Natalie, I would like you to answer this sort of the golden question. Can you make a living out of translation?
Uh-huh.
You see me first of all, because I appear to be black.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll go on anyway. You can hear me, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
I can. Can we all?
Can you see me?
Can we? Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. Okay. So to answer the question, first, I'd like to say that I personally know translators that are making a lot of money, like 60, 70, 80,000 pounds, euros, or dollars, you could say. So it is possible to do it, but that depends on many things. One of them is language combination, what languages you do, what niche you are in. Some niches they pay more, a lot more than others, and how experienced you are. When you're starting as a translator, it's going to be very difficult because you're starting from zero if you don't have any connections. And at first, and in my case, the first 3 years I was marketing myself. I still market even after 13 years, 12 years. But at the beginning, you're going to find that you spend more time marketing than actually doing work. Okay. Which is very important because you need to start building your clientele, your list of clients. You can definitely do it, but there are certain things you need to do. You need to market, and the other thing which has helped me and helps a lot of translators is to diversify. So don't just do translations. Maybe you can diversify to writing. Other translators do copywriting. Others, they do training. They train translators or they have courses. So if you want to go into freelancing, translation is amazing. It's a great profession, but also think whether you want to add some services, you know, additional services to what you offer. And the more open-minded you are, the more willing you are to diversify and to put marketing into your everyday life, because I know a lot of translators, they love translating, but they hate marketing. But you have to do it, because when you are an employee, your boss brings you the work. When you are a freelancer, you are your own boss. So you have to go out and find the work. You have to be prepared to do that. And that's something that you don't really learn at university. University, they tell you academics. No one talks to you about marketing. No one talks to you about diversifying. These are things that you have to do if you want to survive, because it's a very competitive field. Let's face it. Every year there are more and more people entering the field. So you need to find your USP, you know, your unique selling position or proposition. Yeah. So yeah, in doing that, I think it's perfectly possible to make a living out of it. Absolutely.
And in relation to this, I also have a question. Sorry, guys. The thing is that you start translating and you spend 3 years until you got your first customer, important customer at least.
No, when I first started, I was still having a full-time job, which later went into part-time. So I was having a job, I had the income, but in the evenings, I started looking into it. So I was getting clients, but few clients. I mean, at the time, it was not possible for me to live just on translation, but that didn't bother me that much because I had a full-time job at the time. So yeah, so I would say at the beginning, I had a full-time job and I just started bit by bit to kind of expand my list of clients. And then I went part-time, and at the end I quit. You know, I just said, well, you want me to be part-time? I am actually making more money now than I'm making from the part-time job. So I left. But it might have taken me less time if I didn't have the full-time job. Sometimes when you have a full-time job, you kind of fall back into it and you don't try hard enough to you know, become a full-time freelancer. For me, it took me 3 years, but that's because of the job, of the full-time job that I had.
Oh, we have a question from the audience.
If people have a question for Natali, in the meantime, I mean, they can type it and I will read out loud, but I was wondering about this idea of diversifying. Do you think that in order to offer more services or products as a freelance translator, we have to get together with someone else in our profession, or maybe a designer? Do we have to, is it a must to create a team, or can we diversify being a solopreneur?
It depends what you're offering. For example, what I'm doing as a content writer, I can do it by myself. But when I was writing for magazines, sometimes I needed photographers because I'm not a photographer myself. So there have been times when I teamed up with a photographer, and that worked quite well because I had a project to write an article and I was looking for a photographer. So I actually gave a project to a photographer who got paid. But that also works both ways, because you can have a photographer who is looking to work for a magazine, but they need somebody to write an article for the photos, so they can come to you. So I would say it is possible. Yeah, you can team up with somebody. It depends what services you're offering.
Okay. We have a question from Cecilia. Actually, she asks, how are these other services paid, the ones that you offer, Natali? By the hour, per word?
With writing, it's mostly per piece. For example, I've got a set price. I'm gonna say, let's say I'm doing 250 euros or dollars. That's kind of similar for 1,000 words. So the client knows that this is what I charge. So it's an article, and this is something that we agree at the beginning, and other services, well, and I've got a course as well, which is obviously paid per piece as well. So yeah, it's mostly per piece, per article. Sometimes it might be per hour as well. It depends really. Yeah.
Connected to what you have just said, how did you come up with the idea of creating a course for translators? I mean, for colleagues, basically.
Well, like I said, apart from translation, I'm also a writer. So I was thinking, if I wanted to teach something, because the online courses industry is a multi-billion industry. There's so many people just coming up with courses, and people do like learning. This is CPD, right? Continuous professional development. I like taking courses. I like learning. Colleagues like learning. So it's a good way of you know, like building something for the community. And I've been trying to find out whether such a course exists already, whether there are courses for translators who want to go into content writing. I couldn't find one. I don't think there is one. I created it based on all the experience I've had all those years from writing for clients. And so far, I have to say that I've had some really positive feedback from people. I've got about 70 students already on that course.
Wow.
The community has been very, you know, warm to it. They liked it. And for me, because I'm not really charging, you know, hundreds of dollars, the price is always very low, because for me, it's about giving value to the community. So yes, it was a very positive experiment, and I'm glad I did it.
Is there anything similar in the pipeline already?
There is I'm thinking of doing something about travel writing, which unfortunately it's not something I can market at the moment, because travel writing, nobody travels right now, and because my experience is with magazines.
But they have to communicate something, travel brands. They can't just go mute all of a sudden.
Yes.
So
yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But my experience, which I mentioned before, is with travel writing with in-flight magazines. But again, air travel right now, people don't really travel that much. So this is something I am going to start working on. Hopefully, maybe in 4 months' time, 5 months' time, we'll be able to put this nightmare behind us. And then
hope so.
Come out and just announce the new course. So, because I know there's interest, people have told me on LinkedIn that they would like something travel writing related.
Yes.
So that's
very interesting.
That's a kind of niche, right?
Yes. I'm answering for her, but yeah.
Yes, definitely. I was not asking you to tell us everything about it, because we know that projects have to be protected before they come true, right? And speaking about things coming true, in your webpage, Wells of Words, you mentioned that when you were a little child, you wanted to become something, and then you finally end up these paragraphs saying that you have become what you wanted to become when you were a child. Is there any dream that you were thinking of that you still haven't made come true?
Oh, that's, I don't know, I haven't thought about it, because I think from a very young age, I tried to achieve everything I wanted. I wanted to travel. I mean, I was 22 when I went abroad for the first time. So that's late for a lot of people. So I've managed that. I wanted to travel in, you know, countries of all continents. I haven't been to Antarctica. Maybe that might be something I can put on the list. I did go. I've you know, visited all other continents. South America, I visited because I went to Argentina and Uruguay as well. So maybe learn more languages. But you need dedication for that. It's not easy. I wanted to learn Portuguese. I started learning Portuguese, but I don't have the time, and you do need to put in the time.
To practice. Let us know if you're coming to Argentina.
Of course.
I would love to come back, actually. I stayed in Recoleta when I was there, but yeah.
Nice.
Well,
there's a really nice detail that we hadn't noticed, and we would like for everyone to see that. Can you please, Natali, show us what you're wearing? I can't. For some reason, my screen doesn't show me the cameras. But Natalie's wearing
a soccer, an Argentine soccer t-shirt.
A soccer T-shirt from the '78 World Cup. So it's not just any any T-shirt, but one from the from the Argentina '78 World Cup. So that's such a nice gesture. So yeah, I just wanted to mention it.
Black. I can see my screen black. Nobody can see anything. Oh, that's a pity.
Oh, it's a pity. Well, it's at the beginning we all saw you that you were wearing the T-shirt. But anyway, if you want, you can send us a selfie with the T-shirt.
And we'll post it. We'll post it on our social media.
Yeah, definitely. But anyway,
Sure.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. It's really appreciated.
If there are no oppositions, if there is no opposition, I've got one more question, which is basically for those who are studying translation right now and who are maybe just graduated or about to graduate. Is there any piece of advice that you would like to give them?
Well, I've already given that advice. I'm a big advocate of marketing. My advice is obviously to graduate, and congratulations on your graduation. And two things you need to do is CPD. I believe that when you graduate, you don't just stop learning. It's not just, oh, I've graduated and that's it. You need to carry on learning. There are so many things we can learn, from CAT tools to study more on our niche, terminology, everything, marketing, learning how to build a website, lots of things. So there are a lot of resources online. A lot of them are free as well. So study every day, maybe 1 hour or 2 hours during the weekend. This is very important. And the other thing is marketing. Don't be afraid of marketing. You just have to be an ambassador of yourself. You are your own brand. So just go and open a profile on LinkedIn, because it will serve you very well.
I've got no more questions, guys. I don't know if you have any questions from the audience.
No. Did you have a good time in spite of the technical issue?
I had an amazing time.
Oh, that's so great. Me
Thank
too.
you.
Good, because we're on tape. This is on tape.
What about the rest of the team?
I cannot believe that it's been an hour already, and it would be
Flew by.
yes, it flew away. But as I always say, I always say the same thing, and by saying always the same thing does not mean that I don't mean it. But I would like this interview, this meeting, to be the first of many, all in English, and having the possibility of joining with other colleagues as well. It was actually very exciting getting this meeting ready, and I think that we are going to learn a lot of the little things that we are going to find here and there, pronunciation, expressions, and blah, blah, blah. But I really enjoyed it a lot, and this was something I was willing to do, I don't know, at least for the last 3 years already. So I thank you very much from the bottom of my heart, your profile has been, it still is very, very interesting. And I think that there are many more things that we can share from it. So I hope, and this is what I usually say, I hope that this is the first meeting of many to come.
Great, and I'm really happy that I'm your first in your English edition. So yeah, I wish you great luck, best of luck, and I'll be tuning in to watch the following as well, meetings that you do with other translators.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we have this big time difference with Natali, and she was so kind. So yes, again, thank you for being here when it's so late in the evening, night for you already. Thank you for that, especially.
Yeah, it's midnight now already. I'm going to bed after that.
Okay.
Oh. All right. So
thank you
on my end, thank you so much as well. I've had a great time. It's been a great experience, and I hope we'll repeat this experience soon, and that we'll meet you soon in person, right? We have
that would be wonderful.
And
having you
course,
here in Buenos Aires for a person-to-person photograph, yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, when we can travel again, yes.
Yes. Let's hope it is soon. Thank you very much. So this was, if there are no more comments, someone is writing here.
Several people are saying thank you. Jessica Dagmar said, I really enjoyed this interview. Congrats. Thank you for this fantastic interview. Mariela Romero, really enjoyed the talk. Everyone is really happy, it seems, or so they are telling us. So I'll buy it. Thank you.
What was it, Natalie? You said something.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Now, thank
Can
you
I add
for
one more
joining.
thing, please? Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
Of course, thank
the
you.
never-ending edition.
Thank you to all the audience from Villa María, Córdoba, Mendoza, Rosario, Santa Fe, Buenos Aires, Argentina, Buenos Aires, capital, La Plata, and many more cities, and Neuquén, Misiones, and so on that were present today. And we hope you have enjoyed this program. I don't speak anymore.
So I hope that we have collaborated, or that this is one more way to collaborate, to have a stronger colleagues. I wanted to say colectivo profesional. How do you say that, guys?
Stronger professional sense
to
of
have a stronger professional bondage. That's it. To make a stronger bondage among colleagues. Thank you very much, Natalie, for your time, and hope to have you soon again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Bye bye.